Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about developing the leader within you. I read this book a couple of years ago. This is a book written by John C. Maxwell. And you'll find out on this channel I'm a fan of this author. I'm a fan of the work because it is of quality and there's a lot of useful tips and practices and also resources that he gives in each one of these books. This book at the time that I purchased it had over 500,000 copies sold. I think it's probably gone past 1 million at this point. But I'll give you some key points on the book and kind of tell you why it stands out for me. And it's developed the leader within you. Well, it's just like anything else in life. Leadership traits typically are qualities that will be traits that lead to success no matter what you got going on. So I do think leadership traits are worth developing, and whether you determine to be a leader or not. If you're going to be self-employed, if you're going to be in sales, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, leadership traits are required to be successful in all those roles. If you're going to be a teacher, if you're going to be a coach, if you're going to be a leader of people in those capacities, in education, leadership traits are going to be important in all of those roles. So you can't study leadership enough. You can't study too much on that subject matter. So we're going to dive into this and kind of go in through it. So basically, leadership is the influence or the ability to obtain influence over other people. That may be because you've been successful in previous roles. It may be because you have a wealth of knowledge behind you that you give to the team there. It could be for several different reasons. Obviously, when you take a job, the leader is someone who is hired and put in that role above you, so they have an authority from a role. Leadership suggests that you don't have to have an authoritative role, that you basically are taking steps to be a leader where they're at in any role. And basically at the bottom of the ladder, these traits will make you a leader no matter what where you're at, if you're just starting out or if you've been there for a while. So basically, you have a way of keeping in touch with people. You have a way of showing them what you believe and what the common goal is. You're effective in getting those messages out and creating that foundation for success. Efficiency is the foundation of survival as well, so you want an efficient, effective team, and leaders have to sustain that. You can't overestimate the importance of potentially everything. So basically, you can't get stuck on things because you have to pay attention to things loosely and have to share the things that are going to support the most success. You can't have too many priorities. If you have too many priorities, what happens is you end up paralyzing yourself. It's called that paralysis effect from trying to be perfect or trying to do too much. You have to basically see the body of work as something that you slice down to small pieces and you attack that work one piece at a time. We talk about that often on this channel because being a leader and leading people through pretty difficult things in the past, I've seen that everyone, if you can cut down the piece that they're focusing on and start with microchasms of work, anybody can be successful. Anybody can focus on this little piece today, get it beat, and win that today. Then you can do something else tomorrow. And if you stack up enough days where you're doing that, you're going to have substantial results because of that. So some of the quotes that he suggests, we'll go over some throughout this video. As I do in most videos, I try to leave some leadership quotes around things, and these are quotes from folks who have had success in the past or written books about it, have been successful in some pursuit. But when it comes down to that, all of them come up with 4 traits that you expect from leaders, okay? One would be honesty. If they aren't honest, or if they're, got that used car salesman feel, I think everybody understands what that is. There's not going to be any trust. And if you don't have people's trust, then you can't influence them. If people are going to be influenced by you, they have to trust you and have to see that there's some truth in your message. So number 1 is honesty. 2 is competence. You have to be able to do things. You have to be able to manage things. You have to be able to drive to a goal. That competence, that comes from the history of being able to do that and having the understanding to affect change in what you're looking at. So honesty is number 1, competence is number 2. Number 3 is vision. Vision means you see things in a certain way, you have an understanding of where you're at and where you're trying to get, and you have a process to get there. And that vision is the explanation of that process of how it's going to transform you from where you are to where you're going to go. So that's what that vision is. And ethically, the vision should tell the team, it should show the team overall how their work impacts the final goal. So that vision, you want it to be inclusive, so all roles are included and they can see how they impact the status and the egress to that vision and to that achievement of the final goal. And 4 is inspiration. So expect 4 things from leaders: honesty, competence, vision, and inspiration. That inspiration piece, if you want to get people motivated, you have to show them how they impact the final goal of the work, how their work is important. If you do that, you'll have a teammate that's charged and ready to get after it, and that in itself is inspiration. So once you do that, you're motivating teams to move forward and to go towards a common goal. Policies and policy change, we've talked about that, and process. That's necessary. Change is consistent. It's never going to stop. But the biggest piece about that is you don't want to create so much noise about constant change in policies and procedures that your team gets bogged down and doesn't keep up. Okay, there's a lot of companies that do that. They have constant change. That constant change just for change's sake is not beneficial. If the constant movement is not actually progress, then it's waste. So movement in itself is not progress. You have to have progress where you're moving towards the goal and you're having some effect, or you're wasting your time with that. So hard work is the accumulation of easy things that you do. So it doesn't have to be that the tasks are hard. It just has to be that you're moving through them. What you should know is you should work in your areas of strength 80% of the time. You should work where you're learning 15% of the time. And you should work where you're weak 5% of the time. If you do those things that are weakness will get better. Those things you're learning, you're in practice, you'll get better at those too. So ultimately that 80% where you're strong is going to, at one point, include the things that have moved through that 5% and that 15% column. And if the work seems overwhelming, here's the suggestion that I would make. And this is why I don't get overwhelmed by a huge body of work. It's because I am only one, right? There's only one me, but I'm still one. And what that means is I can do something to make the situation better, even if it's just me. So that's kind of has to be, that as a leader, that has to be your mentality when you're leading teams and you're trying to inspire teams, is that it's okay if there's just 3 of us. It's okay if there's just 1 of us. It's okay if it's just me. At the end of the day, we're going to be better off than we were at the start of the day because the effort I put in today will have an impact. So there's a little poem here. It goes, I am only one, but I am still one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. That's basically just being responsible for forward progress and having sub-movement day to day. You be responsible for the resources you have on hand and you use them appropriately. It's not enough to do our best. Sometimes we have to do what is required. That's from Winston Churchill. He said that in a speech to the British people when they were under German threat of the country there in World War II. It's not enough for us to do our best. Sometimes we have to do what is required. I think that's an excellent quote. And Sir Winston Churchill was a very wise man and changed the world with his impetus. And then if you look at what Jesus said, everyone to whom much is given, much will be required. And that's Jesus. He said that in Luke 12:48. So the idea is that you're going to have some intensity. You're going to use the skills that you have. It's expected that the better and the greater you are as a leader and the greater you are with your skills, the more that's going to be on your plate and the more you'll have to do. So just keep that in mind, is the work will not stop. The idea is that as you get better, the body of work will get better and you'll continue to go through that. Develop integrity. The way you develop integrity is you will live what you teach. That's number 1, live what you teach. Number 2 is I will do what I say. Number 3 is I will be honest with others. Number 4 is I will put what is best for others ahead of what's just best for me. And number 5 is I will be transparent and vulnerable. As a leader, you're going to be required to develop integrity to lead your team. Some bosses do not have these traits and do not develop these items. So they typically only get the wisdom of how they have impacted someone after they leave and give an exit interview. That's an awful way to live a life. And when you're doing that, you're putting your teams through a horrible torrent of losing leaders constantly. And I've seen that recently, and it's not good. It's not something that any team will survive, and ultimately that team will keep shedding itself until you can't backfill those leadership roles. That's what it comes down to. It gets to the point where you're not serving your customers, you're not serving your team if you don't have that integrity. Integrity should be something that you require as a leader, but as a follower and as a team member, integrity matters. If your boss or your leader doesn't have integrity, you need to consider that. You may need to move to a different team as soon as possible, because if you don't, what's affecting other people may not be affecting you right now, but it will soon. It takes time. That's why you have to develop integrity. You have to have leadership that's developing integrity. If you don't see that, that should be a major red flag for you. Growth and development of people is the highest calling of leadership. Developing and growing your people is the primary reason that someone should decide to be a leader. My expectation in being a leader is make the place safe, improves the process, improve the production, have people engaged and happy about being there and empowered to make changes there. And when you do that, those people will become leaders, and then they'll start taking leadership roles. And the next thing you know is one of the primary parts of your production will be producing great leaders that can go elsewhere and lead, or lead there and take your spot so you can go elsewhere and lead. At the end of the day, leadership and creating new leaders is part of what all leaders should be doing. To develop the leader within you, you have to have the character to drive people. You have to do right and then feel good about doing right. You have to be committed and driven. You have to make principle-based decisions, meaning you serve your company and your team first before you do other things. Principle-based decisions. Your actions control the attitude of the people around you. So the better you lead them through the quagmire, the better they're going to do and the better they're going to feel about it. Your actions control the attitude. You have to be in the mindset of believing it when you see it. So you have to give leadership in a way that people can see a piece of the stuff coming together so they can believe in the overall plan. So sometimes people believe it when they see it. So you're going to have to celebrate small wins. You're going to have to break the work down into a way that people see that there is momentum. Part of that is you have to create momentum, and you do that by creating small wins, celebrating small wins, and that will get pressure put up behind it so more people are competitively seeking to get to the goal at hand. In every task, you should ask, what are my responsibilities? And you need to maintain constant oversight as a leader. You want to continue doing this, asking what are my responsibilities when any problems arise, because problems are the natural effect of business. As you go through things are going to arise, and you have to address those. You need to be steady, not moody or emotional. If you have moody or emotional leaders, those are bosses. Those are people that are going to cause problems, and when the going gets tough, they're going to be just an additional problem. That's the way that works. So if you don't have a leader that is steady, that's something to pay attention to, because when it gets tough, when stuff hits the fan, they're not going to be a help. They're going to be an additional problem. And that's a fact. And you'll see that play out time and time again if you don't have the wherewithal to see that and seek other options other than being under that leader. All right, so the next thing I want to read through this is a quote from Niccolo Machiavelli, who said, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to take a look at the men around him." I think that's a great quote. Basically, wisdom attracts wisdom. If you're around somebody that has nothing but yes men and only keeps yes men in their stable of people and support and their circle of influence, you want to get the hell away from that. That's an awful situation. That's a person who is toxic, and they will drag everything down around them. Certain corporations that are cash heavy can afford to keep someone like that in a role for very long. Small businesses cannot. So if you're in a small business and there's someone that works for you or you've promoted in your business that has that issue and is surrounded by yes men, is not effective, they don't have that integrity, they don't have that quality of work, you need to address that right away and get that gone. Because the way to lose the best people is keep the bad ones. Okay? Here's the 7 deadly sins of leadership. This is what you have to avoid. This is a great book, and it's because of these references like this. Trying to be liked over being responsible. That's a deadly sin of leadership. Trying to be liked other than respected and responsible. 2 is not asking the team for their ideas or their help. I've said many times, typically a teammate will come up with the same idea that you have. You let them treat it as their idea. They will champion that role and be empowered, and they'll see that the team will see that they're empowered, and everybody will be engaged to create that opportunity for the team. And all you're doing there is building a new leader by letting them do something you already wanted to do in the first place. So ask the team for ideas. The third sin would be thwarting personal talent by emphasizing rules over skills. So a lot of times when you get in constant process change where they're changing process just for change's sake, that's when you could run into some of this where there's all these different rules. It has to be in this format. It has to be on this, yada, yada, yada. So what you end up doing is slowing everyone up because of this one process you put in place. I have seen that happen many times, and it's awful. You'll have an engaged, empowered, intelligent team that's limited to the lowest common denominator because of the stupid process that's in the way. It's idiotic. You have to be there. You have to be responsive and paying attention. That's the only way you can catch those things and move them at that time. But this is something that you do not want to do, thwarting personal talent by emphasizing rules over skills. Number 4 is not keeping criticism constructive. If you're in a leadership role and you're on a team, the thought process is that we're all in this together. If we're all in this together, what that means is we're winning or we're learning. There's no bad things going on there. Now, corrections and growth should be expected, and you should be given that feedback regularly, but you don't want to be giving criticisms that aren't constructive criticism. If you're doing that, then you're just being a bully, and there's no need for that. People don't enjoy that, and they will leave. If you're going to correct people, do it appropriately and make sure that it's constructive. Number 5 is not developing a sense of responsibility in team members. If you have teams that just clock in to get a paycheck and they don't seem like they're responsible for their workspace and the quality of work they do, you should not perpetuate that thought process. You should write that up. You should be doing disciplinary corrections around those type things, because you don't want to get that sense of responsibility missing in teams. If that's the case, you're going to split your team up and you're going to have a severe problem, because other people are going to feel like they're doing that person's work, and ultimately that will come to a head. Number 6 is treating everyone the same way. 7 deadly sins is treating everyone the same way. Someone would tell you that you should treat everybody the same way. I think you should see everyone as 10s, okay, which means they're the top of the line. Now they're going to teach you otherwise, and when they do, that's when you have to adjust accordingly. You treat your superstars like superstars. A lot of places that I have worked, I've implemented programs where I pay based on production. It's that simple. If you're giving me a quality product and you're doing it faster than other people can do it, I'm going to pay you more. Okay? I don't need somebody throwing me a bunch of trash that I can't sell, so I'm not going to pay for that just based on a number. But if you're producing quantity and quality at one time, you're going to make more money. It's just a value add situation. So the sin is actually treating everyone the same, because people outside of that, people do require different things. We talked about the love languages. Well, that is a part of people's hierarchy of needs. When you talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, one of the things they say is they need psychological comforts and psychological safety, and you do that by meeting them on the level of what they need. So you have to be able to treat people accordingly to what they require. They start the same. You don't ever want to put anything negative on somebody, but treat your superstars like superstars, pay for production, and you'll see that you'll drive some teams to very aggressive success. Failing to keep people informed is the last of those 7 deadly sins. One of the biggest, most annoying positions I've been in the past was in a role where we felt like we got none of the info. It was all do as I say kind of situations. And that's not good. You're not able to lead your team when you're not getting the information. Your teams are going to come to you for information. And if you have to say, wait until I find out myself, that starts and stops that people don't need to have, and you'll reduce engagement if that's the case. 60 to 80% of success of any company comes from these 3 things. And as a leader, this is what you get out there in the message. 1, a clear direction. This is where we're going. 2, the right team of players. Hire right and pay correctly to keep the right team. If someone doesn't belong on your team or they're not a proper teammate, get rid of them as quickly as possible, because the quickest way to lose good people is to keep bad ones. So the right team of players is number 2. And number 3, sound finances. So number 3 is one that a lot of small companies miss. You can't just go out there and spend stuff because you're going to write it off. Ultimately, you have to have sound finances, which means you don't waste money, just like you cannot waste time and other resources. Well, that's the video for today. The book is Develop the Leader Within You, or Developing the Leader Within You, John C. Maxwell. That's it right there. Pick you up a copy. It's one of the best that he's written. I think it's in my top 5 of his books. And there's a lot of great stuff in there. I just touched the highlights. So winning teams have great leaders. They pick good people. They play to win. They make each other successful, and they keep improving. And those processes repeat. If you like information like this, please like and subscribe. Please share the channel with anyone that you think may benefit from it. I'm Ben. Be good.